Hey, my name is Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Sinead O'Shea, the director of Pray for Our Sinners. Sinead, you're very welcome to Sydney.
Hello, it's great to be here virtually.
Thanks a million. Hey, congratulations on a very fascinating and wonderful film. I saw that in the press that Pray for Our Sinners was the most watched documentary in Ireland this year. That's a great award to win. So must be very happy.
Yeah, well, it's in the cinemas, so and like it's only August, so maybe someone will overtake us, but we don't think so. Anyway, that sounds really competitive.
Cool. Great. So I've been doing my research, and I know that you've worked for the Irish Times, the Guardian, the BBC, Al Jazeera. What brought you back to a story about Navan, where you're from, Navan, County Meath?
Yeah, it's a good question. I worked longest in Al Jazeera, and that brought me all over the world, and I used to do quite a few stories from Ireland and Northern Ireland as well. So I was quite familiar with that. I suppose the main stories international news media wanted were often about religious scandals. And in the North, I guess it was to do with the Troubles. So I kind of was very familiar with that kind of story. And then an old school friend was telling me about a resistance to the Catholic Church in Navan, my hometown. And I really liked it because I knew that was different from all the other stories I'd covered. I knew that was a different kind of angle, that there's huge suffering in the film, but there's actually something to celebrate for once too. And so I just really liked that. I just thought, well, that's something different. It's funny though, because internationally that film hasn't really played in a very celebratory way. Everyone's like really devastated when they see it. But in Ireland, people have found it relatively uplifting, I think, because it does show resistance, and it does show that, people were willing to take risks at a time when it was so difficult to do so.
So I was interested in the experience of physically going back to where you came from. I'm a documentary maker myself, and 2007, I went back to Drogheda, where I'm from, not far from Navan.
Yeah, Drogheda was the cool place compared to Navan.
Yeah, and I suppose I felt that kind of personal pressure to conform, and it took some kind of softened some of my radical edges that things I've done in other places, which when I'm back home, I'm more conscious of family and community. So I was interested in that experience of being back in a small town after being, round the world, and suddenly, but dealing with a sensitive topic, because it is a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, it was really tricky, because as celebratory as some of the film is, there's still some very unpleasant things that are uncovered in it. And I kind of think it's quite dangerous to sort of condemn everything in black and white tones anyway. And I don't really like trying to do that. I think documentary allows for grey. And so I did want to do that, but I was especially conscious of it because, my family lived there. My little sister, she teaches in what was Norman School. Another of my sisters is an occupational therapist in the hospital. So, they're very embedded in the community. So, it is kind of a battle to be truthful and also not to kind of burn bridges for people you really care about. But I actually did feel that it did achieve. I don't think there was any truth I didn't tell. I thought the truthful thing I could do was to be conscious of the struggle and to say that aloud. But I did say everything, I think, anyway, that needed to be said in the film. And actually, for me, Father Farrell was actually the kind of the surprising figure in it, in a way. I kind of, in my head, I'd identified him as one person, and by the end of the film, he seemed to be less of that character, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that later on, but you did feel able to maintain the journalist persona even while you were back in the
I did, but I did find it difficult sometimes. But I just thought it would be better to admit to that in the film, but still do it. I mean, I think it's provoked a fairly mixed response in the town. Like, most people actually are very enthusiastic about it. I think a couple of the Father Farrell supporters, that portrait of him that's in the credit union in the film, that's been removed from the town's credit union. It was removed as soon as the film was released, and we've never really got to the bottom of why that happened. And I think that's very interesting. Because I don't think the film is a condemnation of Father Farrell, and it's certainly not a condemnation of Catholicism. I am trying to suggest that this was very nuanced, and it was quite complex what was happening in Ireland at the time.
Yeah, so the next question kind of segues there about, there have been several films recently about how Ireland deals with its past and the legacy of the Catholic Church. So I was interested in a comment you made I was reading up in some of the press about why it was important to achieve a balance. And I think you said to ensure the film didn't feel anti-Catholic and to acknowledge the sense of community provided by the church.
Yeah, I guess because I really grew up with that, for good and for bad. But, my parish was Johnstown, which is just outside Navan, and it was quite a big parish. It was unified with Watertown for a bit. And so there was a big GAA club and a primary school and a church. And so that was how that community worked. And, there was joy within that. We played rounders, or, we sang in the choir. We had great fun in school. I really enjoyed primary school. So I can see how the church provided structure. Equally, I can see how the church was absolutely ruthless towards people who strayed, even accidentally, outside its strictures. But I think in Ireland, as much emphasis needs to be placed on the government and how the state behaved in alliance with the church. And, how it's still helping the church, because the church is, of course, going to defend its interests. And of course, it's going to hire really skilled lawyers to protect its interests. The government could be putting more pressure on the church. And it's I think, quite easy. It makes things easier for the church, for the state, if we fixate on the church all the time.
Yeah. The next question was specifically about Father Farrell, because I was interested in how you dealt with that character in the narrative of Father Farrell and the tracking down kind of detective work. And it was I felt at the end it was almost as though the institution he represented had done these terrible things, but that you found him a quite human figure in the end. How did that affect how you were structuring the film?
Yeah, I think it helped. It gave it a more interesting finale, I think. The film was always going to be structured around the testimonies of Mary, Betty, Norman, and Etna. And then you had this kind of antagonist, I guess, Father Farrell, who kind of linked everyone together. But I liked how it gave the film a kind of a surprise at the end. And, he is mesmerizing, when he's making his goodbye speech. I just find that incredibly impressive, that he could stand up and, say things which actually are profound. And he could draw such emotion, from that audience. Now, Mary Randalls, who's in the film, would see it quite differently. And I can also see her perspective. Maybe there is something sinister to it. I also see that Father Farrell, had relatively little power himself in the grand scheme of the church too. So, as I say, it's just very complex. And I think more than anything, I did want to honour the complexity of Irish life, because it wasn't black or white. And for as long as we say to ourselves, they were bad people and there were good people. I don't think that's really going to change anything.
Yeah. I was interested in the device of your placing yourself in the film. Was that always going to be, the first person?
No, I was quite opposed to that. No, the film, the kind of first cut of the film was the testimonies of the people, Norman, Betty, Etna, and Mary, and I thought it worked really well. And I had someone working with me, a co-producer called Maya, and all along she was saying, "But it's weird not to acknowledge yourself now. It's weird. You're from Navan. Like, it's really weird." And I just like, no, but it's not. I don't want it to be like a pop film or something. I don't know what I was thinking. And then I showed it to someone who was, I guess, quite prestigious, and they were like, "You have to put yourself in it." And so then I instantly sort of capitulated. But I'm really only there to move the action along, and to maybe to present the perspective of a slightly younger generation. But yeah, it wasn't something I was dying to do. But it's funny, my first film, Mother Brings Her Son to be Shot, I ended up doing the same thing.
Yeah. I thought it might be because of, with journalism presenting the camera and, presenting that authentic voice, that it might have been something that followed on. So I'm interested to hear that you didn't
There
want to
is
do
an
that.
argument that I suppose in documentary, like, everyone aspires to make observational documentary films, like in the kind of world of high-end documentaries and festivals. They're the documentaries that win awards, and they're the documentaries that you want to make. So the documentaries without narrators. So I always want to make those films. But then I do kind of think there's an honesty to saying, actually, I am here. I'm talking to these people. They probably wouldn't say these things unless I was, there with them. So in a way, I think there's a kind of honesty, or maybe an authenticity, as you say. It's just that I suppose I don't really love being on camera particularly. I don't think I'm really on camera apart from one scene.
Yeah, I actually would agree with you that there is no such thing as complete objectivity, and to try and pretend that is a bit dishonest. I would be with you there and say, yeah, look, this is me, and I'm
falling at it. Yeah,
I think it does. It certainly works. Talking about small town, because that's a very unique experience, and you're talking to a very wide audience. So it does place you there, and I think authentic is a word that's overused, but I think it is. It's right here. And what has the response been to the film where it's been shown in Ireland? It's obviously been very popular. Have you been surprised by it?
Yeah, we have, because see, its original title was In a Small Irish Town, and I thought that was a quite good and inviting title. And then it got into the Toronto Film Festival, which is a really big international film festival, and we got a distributor, and the distributor wanted to change the title to Pray for Our Sinners. And I just thought nobody in Ireland is going to want to see a film called that. They're just like, no, it's just really evokes prayers and endless religion classes and endless masses. So I was always worried that no one would want to see it because of that title. So I think we just were lucky. We got very good word of mouth. Mary Randall's she is just such a nice and charismatic person. She's in her 80s, but she came around and she, did loads of media interviews with me, and she came to opening nights and premieres, and, people love her so much. So I think that really helped the film, and it made people realize, look, it isn't going to be a film about unending suffering, that it is actually quite a human film, and it's quite varied and it's quite nuanced. So yeah, it was a surprise and a relief, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, we have two other films screening in the festival. One is Lakelands, and the other is Anne, about the story of Anne Lovett. They're both films which are set in small town. in the one in Granada, and in a way they're kind of showing the Anne Lovett is a film which has got the grimness of the 80s, and Lakelands has got a lot of exuberance of contemporary film. But what I thought was really nice about yours was a kind of struck a middle ground, between and it had the honesty about the past, but also didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You've still, like you said, that sense of community that you've got. So I thought you've done very well there. What about the response abroad? I know you played at Sydney Film Festival here in July.
Yeah, I didn't hear much about that. It did surprisingly well, like on the US festival circuit, because it's a very small film. Like, it was made for what's called in Ireland like a micro budget. It's the smallest budget you can make a documentary on. So it did really well. It got nominated for prizes and won a prize in one of them. It's really surprising because it just felt like a really small project about my hometown, and it got rejected from quite a few festivals, and then suddenly got into a big one, and then it kind of developed a life of its own, I guess. But I don't 100% know why. I think Mary, Betty, and Norman, like, they're really compelling. They're just they're brilliant, and like Norman's story is amazing. That is an incredible. Yeah. I think the archive of Norman, like, and all those little children talking about corporal punishment, that's an incredible gift. That's an amazing, to sound mercenary, but like, as a documentary maker,
they're fabulous stories. They go down and to bring someone out of a mother and baby's home was just I was following the story and it was like, wow, I didn't expect that.
I know. It's such a relief because you're just, I can't take this. Like, I just can't take this anymore. So and it's just great. It's so brilliant that she escapes, and it's been very nice as well for the participants. Because I was so worried. Well, Norman isn't, but Betty and Etna, they're very reserved, they're very private, and I was so worried that it was going to be difficult for them with everyone seeing it, because what people think is such a big part of this story. But actually, I hope this remains the case. Like, it's been, I think, quite joyful for them. Like, so many people have responded to them, and I think. I just think they've been made to feel very special because of the.
Great. Thanks. That's good. Hey, look, we're running out of time, but I wanted to jump. You mentioned a mother brings her son to be shot, and I really enjoyed that when I saw it. I thought it was a marvelous piece of filmmaking, and I was fascinated. I was in Derry 3 weeks ago, and then somewhere that I've gone to, over the years. But I was wondering, had you any contact with that family? And I was just hoping that the guys turned out good, those young lads.
Enda Murray. He has a baby now, actually. He seems good. I see him on Instagram. He seems good. Yeah, it's funny because when I showed them the film, they were like, "You really watered this down." I was like, I don't know if anyone else is going to think that. Like, it's pretty dramatic, all the stuff that happens.
It's pretty full on.
Yeah. But they're just like, you've left a lot of stuff out. This really makes me laugh. But Hugh as well, I talked to him on Facebook quite a lot. Like, he's alive and kicking despite that lung cancer diagnosis. So they're fairly robust. Hugh thinks I should go back and make another film about the whole situation. And it's really tempting because like, there's endless drama. There's been this brilliant BBC series called Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure if it's screened in Australia yet.
Not yet, but when I was in Ireland people were saying you got to watch this. Yeah,
you
so
can't watch it. It's just brilliant. It's the best
I'm
thing I've
looking out
seen
for
in Northern Ireland. But it deals really well in its final episode about the kind of intergenerational trauma, which I thought was really what Mother Brings was about in the end. You know, was that they just couldn't stop. You know, that there was still a war being fought, even though there wasn't a war. So yeah, I'd really recommend that actually as a kind of follow on. If that doesn't sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually spoke with Alison Miller last night, who directed Lyra,
yeah.
and
I mean,
so
that was quite, you know, that was really shocking and terrible, you know, because that was all the same area, you know, it was all the same part of Derry. It's funny with that film, like, because so much of what you watch, you think it's all make believe, and then these awful things happen. It's very confusing.
Look, it's great. I'm constantly just really satisfied and enjoy going to Ireland and finding these stories and bringing them back and being able to share them. We're going 5 cities with the Pray for Our Sinners. So it's great to have those stories and to show how Ireland is changing and how sometimes it's staying the same. So thanks a million for giving us your time today, and
good luck with Pray for Our Sinners.
Thank you.
Thanks a million, Sinead. Slán agus Banach.
Okay, thank you.